So today, Eric is joining me for New Wave Media. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for having me.
So you lead worship at New Wave.
Yes.
And I think, we have such awesome worship at New Wave. And I think this is an area that people are really, really curious about. So I would just love to know, on a weekly basis, how does the worship team get ready for worship?
So it usually starts at the first half of the week. Our worship leaders will spend some time putting a set together. And they can do that through different methods. Every worship leader has their own way of doing it. Sometimes they kind of just stick to a set structure, like having a loud, fast praise song to start the set, or some people like to have a theme that they kind of progress through in the set. And then there's always response worship. Typically, our worship leaders like to talk to the speakers or the pastor to know what the sermon topic is, so they can prepare a song that allows the congregation to respond through that song after receiving the word. So once they put that set together, typically by Wednesday we have the worship leaders send set information and arrangement information. Maybe they found online some examples on YouTube of things that they want. All these details, they kind of just package it up in an email and they send it to the team, and the team spends the rest of the week preparing that. Their parts for those songs. And then we get to Saturday. Saturday is when we have our worship rehearsals on Saturday morning, and team gets together. They fellowship a little bit, share about their weeks, which is really, really important, just in terms of building, just team building and building that the relationship within the team. I think that is really, really important for how they end up working together on stage. But then they put it all together, and then once they have that all ready, they worked out the kinks, all the transitions. Then on Sunday morning, they show up for a quick sound check and a quick rehearsal, and then it's showtime, and then they just start leading worship, and then God shows up and does wonderful things.
Awesome. How many teams do we currently have at New Wave?
We have 3 teams. Mm-hmm. Someday we will need more teams as New Wave grows, and as we begin to maybe have more services, that may change. But right now we have 3 teams, and each team we try to have paired leadership. I think that is really important to have a strong team that's flexible for the team members. But yeah, right now just 3.
And I noticed, that with the 3 teams that we have, every team kind of leads in a different way. They kind of have a different sound. Yeah. There's one team that likes doing a little bit more gospel, for example, or another one that likes being more experimental. Yeah. How do you guys kind of figure that out? Do they kind of create their own sound? And tell me a little bit about that.
Every team definitely has their own unique flavor when it comes to worship. And I think more and more now, teams are trying to kind of get outside their comfort zone and do things a little bit more creatively. Or I think one thing for New Wave is we like to do. The worship teams tend to avoid songs that are really upbeat and complex and really high energy. I like those songs, but they're generally harder. One, because you have to kind of get the congregation pumped, and execution sometimes takes a little bit more. It's just a little bit more challenging to arrange those songs. So some people in the past have avoided those, but I think right now there's a little bit more of an encouragement to try to get outside our comfort zone and try to do things a little bit outside the box and things that we're not necessarily used to. But yeah.
How do you guys choose your songs? Do you have a formula that you guys all kind of talk about? Is it just, what's on the leader's heart that week? How does that process go? Or is it one fast song, 2 slow songs? What is kind of that?
I mean, sometimes it's that simple. Back then when I was leading worship for youth, sometimes it would just be that simple where, okay, I think these 5 songs will flow nicely in sequence, so I'm just going to do it without putting much thought into it, and God will show up the same. But some worship leaders like to maybe have a central theme, or a kind of progression of themes that they like to take the congregation through. sometimes, yeah, like you said, the formula start with, one or two fast songs and then, one or two slow songs or medium songs in between. But yeah, it depends on the worship leader, and all depends. And I think God will kind of stir in the worship leader's heart differently every week, even with the same leader. An old pastor once made the analogy that worship leading is like you're like a tour guide, and you're taking the congregation to like different stops, and like at every stop you're kind of showing like this is this attribute of God that we're going to stop and observe and praise and acknowledge and explore a little bit, and then we're going to move on to the next stop, and here's another attribute of God that we're going to explore a little bit and celebrate or whatever. And so it's really important that the worship leader has been to those places before, so that they can like take the congregation with them and kind of bring like kind of that fresh revelation in worship to the congregation. So sometimes you want to the worship leader may put together a set that is it might be a reflection of their own personal worship journey, of like, hey, I've been here and I really feel like that God's stirring right now for the church to really just go deeper in this one thing, so I'm going to take them there. And but then sometimes like it doesn't have to be that deep or that intentional. It can just be like, hey, these songs work, and we're going to do them.
I love that analogy you shared, because I think definitely sometimes at New Wave, I do feel like in a worship set, I am like on a journey from like, say, God's, sovereignty to his love and all of that stuff. So that's pretty cool. Tell me a little bit about, I think a lot of times in church and growing up, we always talk about the heart of worship. Yeah. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about what that is?
So I feel like it's really hard to sum up what that is. We definitely use that term in many different contexts, even outside of the context of musical worship. Worship goes beyond just what we do on Sundays with our song. But I think one way to describe it, and I think the song that we're all familiar when we hear the heart of worship, is like Matt Redman's song. Heart of worship, where it's like coming back to the heart of worship, right? And so, but there's one word, one phrase in there where it's talking about where everything else is stripped away, and it's all about Jesus. And so, I feel like as simple as that is, it's also pretty representative, but not necessarily comprehensive of how to describe the heart of worship. And I feel like with that, it's just eliminating all other things that are not eliminating all other things from their significance, and only having one thing remain, which is which is Jesus. And I think that's what that looks like is you end up with a heart that where we're praising and fellowshipping and connecting with the heart of the Father is always the first thing and the first response. So maybe you're going through a good time in life, and you praise God. Maybe you're going through a challenging time in life. The response is still praise God. Maybe you're praying or interceding for a dear friend that's going through a challenging time. You praise God. In all circumstances, you praise God. And I think that is what the heart of worship looks like. Is that kind of in all circumstances, in all situations, your response primarily, first and foremost, is a heart and a posture of praise and worship. But that really just scratches the surface, because I feel like you can really go a lot deeper into and unravel what it looks like and why it's important to have a heart of worship.
I think that's so interesting. I think most people think of worship as just singing, but I really liked how you touched on it's really more of a heart posture, right? And it's not just about singing, but the deeper root of what that could mean.
Yeah.
How do you worship in your personal life as just somebody, right, who leads worship for the general church? Like, how do you personally worship? And then how can you encourage people who want to be able to worship more in their own personal time? How do they even go about doing that?
It's always tough. And it, as a worship leader, definitely there is a burden, not necessarily a burden, but kind of a challenge of I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to just show up on Sunday and sing, but then the rest of my life, like throughout Monday through Saturday, I don't I don't do any of that. But like I said, there's many different ways to worship, right? For me, finances is something that at this point in life is really important to me, and so how can I apply worship to that area of my life? And that's through charitable giving or tithing and stuff like that. I think is one form of worship that's really, really important. And when it comes to like musical worship, I try to spend as much time as possible during commute times because we live in the Bay Area, like we're always sitting in traffic, so that's very valuable time that I don't want to just waste, and I try to funnel as much of that into worship that I can. And then when I'm at home, I like to, if I do have the time, I like to just play guitar and worship and just connect with the Lord. But it is a bummer that it's become, as I get older and older, it becomes harder and harder to prioritize that. So definitely something that I'm challenging myself to be more proactive in and maintaining more of an authentic heart of worship just every day.
I noticed that a lot of worship leaders, they play multiple instruments and they lead with guitar or keyboard. What is your main instrument, and do you play other things? And how do you choose, when you're leading worship, if you do know how to play all these different instruments, how do you choose the one that you want to use?
Yeah, for me, it's interesting because I am an electric guitarist first. I was drawn into, I played violin growing up, but I was drawn into worship because electric guitar was just so cool to me, and I was just fascinated by it, and I love playing blues guitar, and so lead electric guitar is kind of where my heart's at, where I love to serve, and I haven't done it in a long time, and now I'm rusty, and the reason I haven't done it in a long time is because just out of necessity, in the worship leader context, I feel like it's a lot. You want to have a rhythm instrument, right? Kind of like keyboard or like guitar or even rhythm electric guitar, where it's easy to connect in worship and not think about these more complicated details, like adding embellishment to the song, but you're kind of applying more of a foundational musical component to these songs. And so that allows us to, as worship leaders, kind of control the dynamics of the song and kind of lead the band and lead the congregation. It's a lot easier through just a guitar or a keyboard. It's easier to make it more of an extension of my body, where I can just kind of naturally connect. So because of that, I play a lot more acoustic when I lead. And right now I'm just playing bass. I think it's a phenomenally intriguing instrument. It's one of my favorite instruments to play on stage, even more so than acoustic guitar or electric guitar, just because I feel like that you could just get so groovy with it, and there's so much I don't know the right word to describe it, kind of control over the atmosphere that you have through the bass. And then there's this really cool dynamic relationship that you have with the drummer, where you kind of just grooving and vibing off of each other. And I think it's really cool to do that on stage. It's just fun, worship is fun, but yeah, how do we choose? It's just really based on necessity, and at this point in time, and whenever there's an opportunity to play electric guitar for somebody and somebody asks me, I always want to do it. Not always am I able to, but I'll always be welcome to any invitation that provides an opportunity to kind of go back and play what I most love. Yeah.
I feel like having this conversation with you makes our worship makes so much more sense, because I think one of the coolest things about our worship is our emphasis, in my personal opinion, on the electric guitar. And knowing that that's where you started with, and that you're currently leading, I feel like that makes so much sense. And I'm glad that we stress that in our worship team. So that's pretty cool.
The electric guitar is a cool instrument. Definitely as contemporary Christian worship music has become a little bit more has developed over the years. Electric guitar has always been really, really important. But I feel like, because it's funny you bring that up, I feel like it used to be really cool to be the electric guitarist, right? That was like the go-to instrument, and everyone wanted to be like every like Christian Asian male wanted to play electric guitar, or was drawn to it for some reason. But now I feel like the trend is a little bit changing, where the keyboardist is kind of like the cool one.
Ooh.
Because now with with technology and all that stuff, you have. Like we use it's a type of software called DAW. It stands for Digital Audio Workstation, I believe, and it's a software that allows us so that you can plug in your keyboard and you could produce many different voices and sounds, and you can combine them together, blend them. You can alter them in different ways, and it becomes a lot more like the space and the degrees of freedom that you have with that. For creativity become really cool, and that kind of rivals the role of the electric guitar. I don't want to say rival because we don't really rival each other in worship, but like kind of the role in terms of what you can do with it is now comparable to like an electric guitarist with all their pedals and effects and amps, where you can have all these different dials. And so I feel like with just kind of the trend of worship, it's just like there's a lot of excitement around being a keyboardist more so than an electric guitar, like compared to back in the day.
I think that's so cool. I mean, I can't even begin to talk technical things with you with worship, but I mean, I have noticed that keyboardists do that, where they like record like whatever they want to record to supplement what they're going to play live. Or even I was watching a Timberland masterclass about how he makes beats, and that's exactly how they do it. They just record layers and layers, and then when they're doing it live, they have all this like background that's already just like filling the space of what they want to hear, which is really cool.
And there's like it's cool because it adds a production aspect to it, and it gives you a lot more power and like freedom what you can do live. The software that we use, it's called Ableton Live. It's actually meant for DJs, and DJs often prepare samples and stuff like that that will loop or play back on stage, and they'll play, or we will play over. We have the option of doing something like that and then playing over it. But we also never want to like overdo it, because then it becomes like, at what point is like so much of your musicianship automated? Like at what point are we just singing karaoke? So you definitely want to maintain some organic and authenticity to what we're playing, and for the most part, I think most of our teams don't do a lot of these, like they don't add these or play back these samples and loops on stage, unless maybe the song has a very specific iconic motif or riff that they want to play, they want to have in the song, but they also want to play other things at the same time. It's more of like a supplement to like kind of help out.
No, but I love hearing all of this stuff, and I'm glad that at least at New Wave we're pushing those boundaries, or exploring it, and just incorporating that into our worship to make it cool and modern and relatable to people. Is there a certain song that you love playing, whether in your personal worship or one that you love leading?
I don't really have a song that I like more than others. I think it depends on where I am at in life. Maybe that might change, or like but yeah, I generally, when we're playing on a worship team or in a band, you kind of just remove, even like we never want to remove God from the worship aspect, but if you're just talking strictly about the music and like being in a band and having fun, what's the most exciting thing to me is always playing a very fast, dynamic, high energy song that has a lot of cool parts for all the different instruments, and I think it's always really, really fun. And I think it's important to have fun when we worship. And I think when we have fun leading worship and playing worship, I think the Lord is pleased. There's always the pride and or the risk of you don't want to steal glory from God in any worship context. But I think mature worshipers are able to have fun in their set. So I like fast, high energy songs. Definitely not something that we do a lot of. A lot of people are sometimes daunted by it because it's a hard thing to pull off. But I feel like you just gotta do it, and it'll be fun, and then people will start doing it more. But yeah, there's not a lot of songs that I can talk about what I don't like, I
Yeah.
guess. Or not songs that I don't like, but songs that I'm less inclined to lead. And I feel like there's songs that so I really like authentic songs that are written in a way that you can tell this song is not meant for hype. This song is not meant to simply draw people into worship and that's it, or draw people into the act of singing and that's it. I like songs that are really, really like thoughtfully written. I think there's a lot of songs out there that are like super poetic. Now, it's not always easy to lead those songs in a corporate worship context because it's very wordy, and then it's like when you have a lot of words and a lot of syllables, it becomes harder for people to engage, and like, they have to kind of read the lyrics and catch up and like kind of also assess or analyze what it means, and then also try to engage their hearts with what they're singing. So I really like these poetic songs, but I generally don't like to lead them as much. Just because like as a worship leader, kind of the burden or the responsibility we have is the connection of the congregation with the heart of God. And so if anything compromises that, achieving that goal, I generally try to see what I can do to avoid it. But, maybe there's songs that are really familiar. For example, How He Loves is a great song. It's a song that almost every Christian knows. But if you actually we're familiar with that song, but if you actually look at the lyrics, it is a really big mouthful, and it's because it's been sung so many times that the church, a modern church, is familiar with it, so it's not that bad. I really like hymns. Hymns are cool. They're very fun and interesting to arrange in contemporary worship, and so it's.
Hymns really made a comeback, don't you think?
Yeah, they did make a comeback.
Yeah.
They're cool again.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes it's hard for me to do a hymn. It might sound really cool, but like it's really, really important to me more and more so recently, like to have authenticity in worship and everything that we sing to be intentional and like really genuinely expressed as we sing it. But the thing with hymns is like written in another like
it's another lifetime.
It's an older English kind of like this is not how I pray. Can you imagine if I started praying like that? How like it sounds pretentious, right? But it's also it becomes less genuine. But then I don't like there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. For me personally, I want to remove as many barriers as possible to fully like authentically, genuinely connect with God. And so, although like I'll sometimes do hymns because it's fun to arrange them and maybe even mix them with other songs. I'm pretty careful with it just because I want it to be like thou, right? I don't address God like that, generally. So hymns are fun, but it depends. I also, something that I'm like I don't understand yet is like songs that are written in a really romantic kind of a theme, or like the word choices are very romantic, as if you're kind of singing to a significant other in a really romantic context. That's like I don't think that's wrong, right? Because the church is in scripture, the church is described as like the bride of Christ, so maybe it's totally okay, but to me it's something that like I think it was popular a few years ago. There's a lot of songs that came out a few years ago that like really went hard with that. And I think a lot of people are able to connect with God a little bit more intimately in a different way that I don't really understand through those kind of songs. But for me, it's like, I don't know, it's weird. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm just, it's weird for me to connect in that way. And I think everyone has their own, special, unique relationship with God. And so yeah, for me, I generally not a fan of leading those songs. Some other worship leaders might, and I think it's like very powerful when they sing those songs, but not necessarily me.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really interesting because there's some songs that are more personal worship, and then there's other songs that are more corporate and communal.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And that's something that I think over the years learning to distinguish between what is good for corporate congregational worship when you're in the context of 2 or more gathered versus I am, in my room, pursuing after the heart of God on my own. I think there's different songs for both occasions, and I think we're just so blessed to be able to have both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite group that you are inspired by in worship, or one that you particularly follow because you feel like it takes you into, God's presence more?
No, not really not really a favorite group. There are some groups that I find really interesting. Like as a musician, I'm really excited that in Christian music, traditionally you see that there's not a lot of skill in Christian music. It's just really simple. But then occasionally there's these like few bands that, like I said, like earlier about having fun in worship, they really have fun and they really are extremely skilled and talented musicians. And I think that's those bands are always really interesting. Artists are really interesting to me. In biblical times, you had kind of the most excellent, most skilled musicians, and I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't have that today. But there's bands like Israel Houghton's his band New Breed, I think is really cool. They're just there's just so much going on whenever you listen to their stuff, and for me it's interesting to listen to it and kind of dissect it. There is a worship leader who used to be the guitarist for the band Journey, is Lincoln Brewster. He is a excellent blues guitarist, and so because I'm a blues guitarist, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that I appreciate with what he does and what he incorporates into worship. And he also, as a worship pastor and worship musician, he often addresses the or not often, but I've seen some interviews where he addresses clearly something that he's kind of has a tension in his own heart and trying to reconcile how much is too, am I playing too much? What is too much in a worship contest in terms of I don't want to be too flashy and showy with what I play. I don't want to steal God's glory, but how much of that is actually God is actually really pleased and excited and blessed when we pour out just excellence and and the passion that we have in our instrument. So he talks about that and kind of his struggle, and I always thought that was really cool and something that I'm trying to figure out too. There's some worship leaders that I just like to listen to. Maybe when I'm driving, when I want to worship on my own, and maybe I don't have my guitar with me when I'm driving, so I'll tune into some some churches live Sunday, or not live but recorded Sunday worship services, and I think those are always really great to kind of use to create a mood of worship and to connect with God through those recordings. Yeah.
For our worship team, going back to our team in New Wave, what are the attributes that you look into? If somebody wants to join the worship team and try out, because I know that's how I think our current system is.
Yeah.
Is it purely skill? Is there a heart aspect to it? What are some of those qualities that we look for?
So it really boils down to kind of why they want to join the worship team. I feel like if there are people who are really, they really have that heart of worship, and they understand why we worship in church, and they have that yearning to bless the church or serve the church in this way, or they feel called in this way, I think it's very evident who those people are when you talk to them, not even necessarily in an audition or an interview as their candidates when we're evaluating whether they should join the worship team. But those people are definitely people who understand kind of the burden that we have in the worship team to connect people with the heart of God. But going back to what I was talking about with balancing skill and heart, this is an ongoing debate across all worship organizations anywhere. Is what's the ratio? What takes priority? And I've always felt okay, if you have a true heart for worship and you really you really understand why we worship and you have that heart of worship, then naturally your skill will be also increased, and you become a good steward of that skill, whether singing or some instrument, because you have that heart for excellence, because this is an offering that you're giving to God. And so, it's not always easy to assess kind of where people are with regards to those two, balancing those two. But I think when you look at the heart and you see the heart is good, you can always expect the skill, in most cases, not always, you can expect the skill to either catch up or already, be there, because they understand that I have to be a good steward of my gift. And that in itself is a very important form of worship. We look for all sorts of different qualities too, with regard to like how these people are they integrated into the community? Are they actual participants of New Wave, or are they just coming onto, they're trying to join the worship team because they want that platform, that spotlight? And it's usually pretty easy to tell who those people are, or if they if they're here for a genuine worshiper wanting to build the church, versus like, it's really fun to play with a band and I want to be on stage under a spotlight. So it's usually pretty easy to weed those people out, and we tend to want to see people who have been invested in the church and part of the community and belong to a life group, and they participate, and they've built a community here, or they've integrated themselves into the community of New Wave sufficiently. And that's really, really important.
So I think worship at New Wave is one of those things that people love. They look forward to, and maybe you can share, what's coming up in worship for New Wave, or what's coming up in New Wave for worship. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Or what's coming up? Like, what are there new things happening, or what can we expect to come?
Well, we are currently in like a recruiting season right now, where we're trying to bring on more people and grow the team, just in terms of manpower. But what's coming up? There's I don't know. There's always things that we can plan, right? That we can have worship events, worship nights, stuff like that. But I guess for me, where I want worship to go, I would, my kind of dream and hope for the worship team is that in this next year or so, moving forward, I think now that New Wave is starting to has started up, and we're starting to settle and starting to get, okay, now we've established kind of the foundation. We understand how service is gonna flow. We understand all the protocol. We've established all that. Okay, now where are we gonna go? And growth is really important. Not necessarily just in manpower, but also being able to grow. I don't know, grow vertically, right? What does that mean? Being able to go deeper into worship. And I co-lead the worship ministry with Victoria, and we were talking about this, and I think she put it in a really simple, but also elegant way. It's just that kind of our dream for the worship team, and also just even the greater congregation, is that we would become true worshipers. The worship team would become worshipers. And I think there is this burden on our hearts to kind of push and encourage the church culture to really step into that heart of worship and really embrace kind of like this access we have to the Father, and kind of even the spiritual weaponry that we're equipped with, and the freedom and just this amazing thing that we have through worship, and really step into that. Our goal and our dream for the worship team is that they would indeed really just run into that. And then with that would influence the culture of New Wave to really go deeper in worship, and really make that a core part of our identity individually, and also as an organization, as a church. And I think once we get there, I believe that God will start to move in ways that are just beyond what we can even fathom, things that we don't even expect now. And I think that just worship is such a powerful thing, and I don't think we've really even scratched the surface of what God can do through worship. Even things like signs and wonders and healings, and God manifesting his glory in different ways on Sunday, or even like in prayer meetings or in life group meetings. I think once the heart posture of our church begins to align even more so with the heart of God through, many ways, but one way through worship, that's when we will see that change start to occur. And I'm just really excited to see how God will move, and the testimonies that he'll write through our church, through that. And I think that itself it'll open a lot of doors for a lot of other things. We don't want to create a worship experience just to be a part of a worship experience. We don't want to create a worship or a prayer movement just to say that we've been able to do it, or we feel proud of ourselves for establishing this. But we want to create something, a platform where God can really use us and move through it. And I think that will really open up doors for like, for example, like worship. If you create a worship environment that's just like, man, we start singing and immediately God shows up and starts healing people. What will that do? That will bring in, I think that will attract people to our church, and not necessarily in a way that like, oh, we're concerned about growth in numbers, but when we're able to create this environment through worship that one is welcoming, but also inviting to connect with God. And when we create this, when we allow God to use ourselves as this platform, then I see worship as a really important tool for bringing more people, sharing the gospel with more people, bringing more people into the kingdom of God, and growing this family, not for the sake of numbers, but for the sake of the world, right? We can save more souls. We can, like, the signs and wonders were meant to be a way to kind of draw in, provoke thought, be thought-provoking, and kind of draw in non-believers and to kind of make them question, like, who is this God? And if we can create a worship environment where God shows up and does things through worship, I'm just excited to see where that will go, in terms of saving more souls, and even people who believe in God but haven't yet stepped into knowing, like, just the extent of how good God is. I think we can really reveal that through worship and having that atmosphere that we steward at New Wave. And I also want to, like, one thing that I've always thought about was, like, hey, how come sometimes it's difficult to get on, like, Sunday morning, it's in the morning, people just kind of got out of bed, like, it's hard to get the congregation sometimes to, like, get into it, right? You need to play a few songs to kind of warm up everybody, and then, like, now they're really engaged. But I'd love for us as a congregation to just, like, at any given time, being able to just go right into worship and not need that warm up, but, like, because, like, I think we need that sometimes because our bodies might not be willing, our state of mind is not necessarily aligned with God at that moment. We might be like, maybe we had an argument with our significant other on the car ride into church, whatever. But then, like, there's a lot of things that are distracting us, and I feel like it would be really cool if we can create a culture of worshipers where, in any given moment, we can just jump right into worship and start declaring who God is, in not necessarily just Sunday, but in all things, right? Like I said earlier, like, if you're struggling, or if you're happy about something, or you're challenged about something, you go and have a good day, have a bad day, you can just get right into worship in all those different situations. And I think, if we can just show up on Sunday, and just, like, get into it, like, that gives us, like, I don't know, our worship sets are generally, like, 30 minutes allotted for the worship set. Like, if we could not spend the first 20 minutes trying to get people warmed up, and just, like, we have the full 30 minutes to just go deep and go hard, and see where God wants to take us, because our hearts in that moment right away is open to what God wants to do and how he wants to move, that would be really exciting.
That is so true, because I feel like so many times, like, that worship buzz where like God's there and people are engaged is usually during the third song.
Yeah.
And by that time we're like getting ready to wrap up. So yeah.
Exactly. And then like for retreats, right? Like growing up, like every year retreats is like, okay, Saturday night is when it's going to be like real lit. I was like, but why? Why does it have to be that way? And I think a lot of the worship there is kind of over that sentiment where like, why do we have to wait till Saturday where everybody is like, okay, I've heard enough sermons, I've worshiped, I've done enough worship sets where now I feel like I'm a little closer to God, so I can get right into it as soon as we start that Saturday night set. Like, no, like the first chord that's strummed in the first set, like, why not just go?
Yeah, just jump right into it.
Jump right into it and like just be prepared at all times to receive new revelation and of God and celebrate God and always be having a heart of gratitude where we're always giving thanks, and we can always just jump right into it right away, and that would be amazing.
Yeah, no, totally. I thank you for sharing all of that, because I think personally for me, my burden and passion is always just like people being able to experience the realness of God. And I think worship is one of those like the pure ways that people can actually meet God in a really personal way. And so I'm really excited to hear what's on your heart for worship personally, and also for New Wave. And I'm ready to like dive deeper, as long as you guys take us there. So that's great. Yeah. I know a lot of people always wonder, they love the songs we sing. Do we have a place where people find them? I heard that like were we starting a Spotify list or something where we just like upload the weekly songs so people can go and I'm
not sure. I've heard something about that as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if we actively maintain that, but it's definitely something that we can do to just introduce the congregation to new songs, and even as we start to write our own songs within New Wave, I think it would be cool to kind of point people to kind of where because I think it's a good idea, because the songs that we sing are often indicative of where we are seasonally, like where is New Wave, kind of where God's taking us. And I think even like having that playlist and even being able to historically look at, what songs have we sung, and being able to like look at a high level where how those themes are progressing over time is it would be a really cool, like kind of an anthropological assessment of where we are. But yeah, I don't know that we do that right now, but definitely something we could look into doing, and being a little bit more intentional about sharing the songs that we're singing and making that available to the church.
Cool, because there's even songs that like I don't know all of the songs in the worship spectrum, and sometimes I'm like looking up a lyric, or what is that app that we use where we can like find the song really quickly? So Shazam, yeah. But anyway, that'd be really cool if we.
Yeah. Do you think we do too many new songs?
No, maybe there was a while where we did, but the cool thing is that every single song you guys pick is always a really good song. So even if it's new, like I don't mind, because it's a good song.
Yeah,
and I'm able to connect in a different way with God. Yeah,
because like I think that's something we've always been really cautious about, is that okay, if we overwhelm people with new songs, like what if they can't connect because they're just like, oh, I don't know the song I'm gonna check out, oh, I have to learn a new song again. Definitely something that we like kind of pay attention to.
I think we sing a lot of songs, but I think the leads are really good about like if it's a song they led, then they'll lead it again the next time. So it might take like 3 weeks before you hear it again, but you hear it, and again, it's a good song. I think people kind of they jam to it and they'll find it. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Sharing your heart for worship as well as New Wave's heart for worship.
Yeah.
Thank you.